The air crackles with tension as Perseus stands before King Polydex, the weight of an impossible demand pressing down on his shoulders. Bring back the head of Medusa, not just any monster, but the Gorgon, whose very glance turns flesh to stone. It's a death sentence disguised as a quest, and the young demigod knows it. Yet, beneath his hesitation, burns a fiercer resolve to shield his mother from the king's relentless advances. As Perseus accepts this fateful task, the gods watch silently from the shadows. Athena's presence, like a whisper of storm winds, hinting at schemes far beyond mortal understanding. This isn't just a hunt for a monster. It's a journey into the heart of divine intrigue, where every step could unravel destinies. And so, with the sand shifting beneath his sandals, Perseus takes his first unknowing steps toward a confrontation that would echo through eternity. Perseus kneels on the cold marble of Athena's temple, the torchlight flickering across her bronze shield like distant lightning. The goddess's voice is steady but hollow, as if she speaks through a mask of divine indifference. When she offers him her polished shield, a mirror to deflect Medusa's deadly gaze, her eyes betray no pity, only calculation. Was it her hand that twisted Medusa's fate long ago? The question lingers unanswered as Perseus tightens his grip on the gleaming metal. Then, with a rush of feathers and mischief, Hermes appears. The messenger god grins as he presses winged sandals into Perseus's palms, followed by a sword curved like a moonlit whisper. The Gorgon's lair has teeth beyond her gaze. Hermes murmurs, his laughter sharp as the blade. Stones aren't the only things that hunger. As Perseus straps on the sandals, the wind lifts him skyward, but his stomach twists like the waves below. Divine gifts come with invisible strings, and the deeper he flies into the storm, the more he wonders. Is he the hero of this tale, or just a piece moved across the gods' board? The salt-stung air carries no answers, only the distant echo of serpentine hissing, drawing him closer to the edge of myth and madness. The wind howls like a wounded beast as Perseus lands on the jagged shores of the Graeae island, his winged sandals skimming the blackened rocks. Shadows cling to the earth here, thick as tar, and the air smells of salt and something older, something decayed. Ahead, crouched in a tight circle like vultures over carrion, sit the three Graeae sisters. Their withered hands pass a single, milky eye between them, their shared tooth clicking like a rusted lock. They don't notice him at first, their whispers weaving a thread of secrets, until Perseus lunges. His fingers close around the slippery orb, just as it's tossed between them, plunging the sisters into sudden, squawking darkness. Young fool, one hisses, her voice like dry leaves crushed underfoot. The Gorgon's curse is older than your bones. Do you even know what you hunt? The sisters' laughter curdles the air as they taunt him, spinning fragments of a story Perseus has never heard. Medusa, once radiant, once devoted, her only crime being too beautiful in Athena's temple. A god's jealousy, twisted into a snake-haired nightmare. The words lodge in Perseus's chest like a blade. Is he any better than the king who sent him here, trading one cruelty for another? But the Graeae have no mercy to spare. North, always north, they croon when he demands Medusa's lair, their bony fingers clawing at the empty air for their stolen eye. Where the waves gnaw at the cliffs and the statues never blink, as Perseus tosses the eye into the distant surf, their shrieks following him like vengeful gulls. He feels the weight of something darker than duty settling over him. The sister's truth hangs unanswered, but the path ahead has no room for doubt. Somewhere beyond the horizon, stone faces stare sightlessly into the sea, waiting for him. And the wind carries the faintest hiss of snakes, as if the island itself is laughing. The sea spray turns to mist as Perseus stumbles upon the cave of the western nymphs, their voices weaving through the damp air like threads of silver. They move like liquid shadows, their eyes holding centuries of sorrow as they press a woven satchel into his hands, its fabric humming with unseen power. Then comes the helm, cold as midnight, its surface drinking in the torchlight until it seems to vanish before his very eyes. A dead god's parting gift, murmurs the eldest nymph, her fingers brushing the helm's edge with something like reverence. But even darkness cannot shield you from the truth you carry. Their song rises then, a lament so ancient it makes the rocks tremble. It tells of Medusa's golden days, when her laughter rivaled the sun, and her prayers rose to Athena like incense, until the sea god claimed what was never his to take. The nymphs' voices crack on the final verse, the air thick with salt and something sharper. Divine wrath turned a woman into a warning. Perseus's grip tightens on the helm. He came believing this was a hunt, but the weight in his chest feels more like theft, stealing what little life Medusa has left. Yet when he closes his eyes, he sees his mother flinching at the king's approach, her hands trembling as she braids her hair too tight, as if the pain could anchor her. The image hardens something inside him. Gods play their games, mortals endure the consequences. As Perseus fastens the satchel to his belt, the nymph's melody shifts, a dirge for the living, for the choices that coil around men's throats long before the snakes do. The cave ahead breathes, not with wind, but with the slow, grinding shift of stone. The walls glisten with the outlines of faces. Warriors, sailors, all frozen in the moment terror became their tomb. The scent is metallic, like rust and old blood, but beneath it lurks something floral, almost sweet. The last traces of the woman Medusa once was, perhaps. Perseus pulls the helm over his head and vanishes not just from sight, but from himself, a killer's privilege, to hide even as he strikes. The air hums as he steps forward, the cave's whispers curling around him like a question. When justice wears the mask of vengeance, who mourns the monster? The cave exhales a slow, wet breath of damp stone and something sharper beneath, like copper left too long in the rain. Around Perseus, the petrified forms of those who came before loom like broken pillars, a spear still raised in a hand that will never throw it, a mouth forever gaping in a scream no one will hear. Their hollow eyes seem to track him as he creeps forward, though he knows it's only the flicker of torchlight. Athena's shield trembles in his grip, its surface reflecting not his own face, but the curve of a sleeping figure ahead, Medusa, her serpents tangled in a restless knot around her brow. Each step is agony. The winged sandals, once weightless, drag as though the air has turned to sludge. A single pebble dislodges under his foot, rolling with terrible slowness across the cavern floor. One of the snakes lifts its head, tongue flicking. Then another. Perseus freezes, the shield angle just so. Medusa's reflection is a distorted thing, her shoulders rising with each breath. the scales along her arms catching the dim glow like shards of broken glass. The serpent at his ankle strikes before he can react. Not a bite, but a brush of cool skin against his calf, the barest warning. Medusa's eyelids flutter. His pulse hammers so loud he fears it will wake her. In the shield's reflection, her fingers twitch, claws scraping stone. Every myth he's ever heard collapses into this moment. Not a monster, but a woman stirring from troubled sleep, her lips parting as if to speak, or scream. The air thickens. Somewhere deeper in the cave, water drips like a slowing heartbeat. Perseus tightens his grip on Hermes' blade. To hesitate is to die. To strike is to become something else entirely. The choice hangs between one breath and the next, heavier than any god's gift. And the serpents, they never stop watching. The moment the blade flashes, Medusa rears back, not in fear, but with a sound halfway between laughter and a sob. Do you even know whose blood you spill, little hero? Her voice scrapes like broken pottery, rough with centuries of solitude. The serpents twist around her temples, their hissing forming words too low for Perseus to catch. He sidesteps her lunge, the edge of Athena's shield, catching the faint glow of her emerald scales. For a heartbeat, their eyes meet, not through her cursed gaze, but in the reflection. What he sees there isn't fury, it's recognition. The cave trembles as she strikes again, claws raking the air where his throat had been. Her movements are fluid, desperate, like someone fighting to stay underwater just a moment longer. They never send the gods to do their dirty work, do they? She spits. A serpent flicks its tongue near his wrist, not to bite, but to taste his sweat. Perseus pivots, Hermes' sword singing as it arcs toward her. The steel finds its mark, but the scream that follows isn't hers. It's the sound of stone cracking, of centuries of silence shattering at last. Her knees hit the ground first. The serpents go still mid-hiss, their coils loosening like ropes, cut free. Blood wells dark between her fingers where she clutches her side, yet her lips curl into something too bitter to be a smile. Tell me, she gasps, when Athena hangs my head on her shield, will she finally feel like a victor? The question hangs, thick as the petrified tears glistening on her cheeks. Perseus's arm trembles. This was meant to be a triumph. So why does the air taste like ash? Then movement, not from Medusa, but from the walls. The stone faces of her victims seem to shudder, their mouths stretching wider as if to voice a final warning. The ground lurches beneath him, the cave's very bones protesting what's been done. Perseus staggers back, the sword slipping in his grip. Too late, he realizes, curses don't die with the cursed. They ripple outward, staining everything they touch. And as Medusa's body crumples, her blood pooling black around the roots of long-dead flowers, the last thing he hears is her whisper, carried on a breath meant only for the gods. Look at what you've made of us. The severed head weighs more than Perseus expected, not just in his hands, but in his spirit. Dark venom seeps through the enchanted satchel, hissing as it burns tiny holes in the fabric. The air still hums with Medusa's final words, each syllable slick with prophecy. Athena's pride will drown in blood. He wants to fling the head away, to pretend he didn't hear, but the cave walls tremble with the approach of the other Gorgons. Their shrieks aren't just rage, they're grief, raw and keening, echoing through the tunnels like a storm gathering force. Perseus doesn't run. He flees, the winged sandals carrying him faster than thought, the helm of darkness clinging to his brow like a second shadow. Outside, the sky has cracked open, rain slashing sideways, as if the world itself is weeping. The wind carries fragments of screams behind him, the sound of stone talons scoring rock. He doesn't look back. Some horrors chase you not through tunnels, but through memory, and Perseus knows, deep in his marrow, that this isn't victory. It's a debt. The sea below churns, waves lifting like grasping hands. For the first time, he wonders, if Athena knew Medusa's fate before it was spun, why send a mortal to do the cutting? Why let the curse live on in whispers and venom? The satchel jerks in his grip, the head within stirring as if it can still hear him. Perseus's breath comes short, his thoughts tangling like the snakes, now stiffening in death. Maybe the gods don't just punish the proud, maybe they need them to keep their stories alive. A gust nearly tears the helm from his head, and for a heartbeat, he's visible. A lone figure against the bruise-colored sky, drenched in rain and something darker. Then the wind shifts, and he's gone again, but invisibility can't hide him from the weight settling in his chest. Medusa's voice rings in his ears, not as a threat, but as a truth too heavy to outrun. Look at what you've made of us. The words cling, sticky as the venom eating through the satchel's threads. Ahead, the horizon bleeds into the storm, and Perseus flies on, not yet realizing the hardest part of his journey isn't behind him. It's waiting where the waves meet the shore, where the blood of gods and monsters alike washes up to tell their stories anew. The winds scream like hunted animals as Perseus flies westward, the storm lashing at his cloak with icy fingers. Beneath him, the ocean heaves not with waves, but with something deeper, as if the water itself recoils from the prize he carries. Then, through the scudding clouds, he sees it, a figure so massive it blots out the horizon. Atlas, the Titan, kneels upon a cliffside, his muscles trembling under the impossible weight of the sky. Centuries of strain have etched cracks across his starlit skin, his breath coming in labored gusts that shake the earth. Perseus lands without meaning to, his sandals scraping against rock. The Titan's groan vibrates through the ground, a sound older than Olympus. Little thief, Atlas rasps, though his eyes never lift from their burden. Do you know what true weight feels like? His voice is a landslide, slow and inevitable. Something in Perseus cracks open. Perhaps it's the way Atlas's shoulders bleed silver, where the heavens grind against them. Perhaps it's the memory of Medusa's last words, still coiled around his ribs like smoke. Without thinking, he reaches into the satchel. The moment his fingers brush the Gorgon's cooling brow, the air shivers. Atlas finally turns, and for the first time in eternity, his face slackens with something like hope. The transformation is an instant. Stone creeps up the Titan's legs, sealing over the wounds the sky carved into him. His sigh, as the petrification reaches his chest, is almost grateful. When the last flicker of life hardens into granite, the heavens roar upward, their weight finally anchored to the earth. The new mountain stands silent. Perseus stumbles back, the satchel searing his palm. The power he just wielded should feel like victory. So why does his stomach churn like the sea below? Waves slam against the cliffs, their spray stinging his face. The water doesn't look blue anymore, it looks black, thick as the blood still oozing through the satchel's threads. He ties it shut with trembling hands, but the heat lingers, pulsing against his hip like a second heartbeat. High above, the storm breaks just enough to reveal a sliver of sky. Not the clear blue of home, but a sickly yellow, the color of old bruises. Perseus knows, with a certainty that roots in his bones, that gods are watching. Not with pride, not with fury, but with the quiet intensity of players observing a move they'd long anticipated. The wind shifts, carrying the scent of salt and something fouler, the metallic tang of fate, perhaps, or the first whispers of a curse, settling into its new keeper. The sandals hum at his ankles, eager for flight. Yet as Perseus leaps into the screaming gale, one thought rings louder than the storm. What have I become? Not a question, an omen. The screams slice through the salt-thick air before Perseus even spots the source, a girl lashed to the jagged cliffs, her dark hair whipping like a banner in the storm winds. Andromeda, the name comes to him unbidden, as if whispered by the waves crashing below her bare feet. Her wrists strain against the rusted chains, not from fear of the roiling sea, but of what rises from it, a monstrous shape breaching the surface, all glistening scales and teeth like shattered ship masts. The creature's roar shakes the cliffs, sending loose stones skittering into the abyss. Perseus hovers midair, the winged sandals humming with tension. Every instinct screams at him to act, yet something ugly coils in his chest. Another demand, another life traded like coin. The satchel at his hip pulses hot, Medusa's severed head shifting as if stirred by the chaos below. Andromeda's terrified gaze locks onto him, not pleading, but seeing him, truly seeing the exhaustion behind his hero's guise. That look undoes him. Diving like a thunderbolt, he wrenches open the satchel. What happens next isn't a battle, it's a grotesque tableau. The sea monster surges upward, jaws gaping only to meet the Gorgon's lifeless stare. Stone erupts across its body, cracking through scale and sinew with sickening speed. The creature's final snarl freezes mid-roar, its petrified bulk crashing back into the waves with a splash that soaks Andromeda's trembling form. Her chains shatter under Perseus's sword, but her relief lasts only a heartbeat. A new voice booms across the cliffs, King Cepheus, striding forward with a retinue of guards, his gold-crowned face alight, not with gratitude, but calculation. A lucky strike, he sneers, eyeing the satchel with naked hunger. Prove you're more than a thief with a dead woman's power, and perhaps you'll earn my daughter's hand. The words land like a slap. Andromeda flinches, her joy withering under her father's gaze. Perseus's fingers tighten around the satchel's straps, the weight of it suddenly unbearable. How many more trials, how many more blades to wield, monsters to slay, before the gods decide he's suffered enough? The sea breeze carries a new scent now, not salt, but something metallic, like the first hint of blood in water. Medusa's voice seems to coil around his thoughts, softer than the tide. You thought freedom would follow the blade, but chains come in many forms. Above them, the gulls circle silently, as if even they hold their breath. The choice looms: walk away and leave Andromeda to her fate, or play the hero one more time, knowing the role never truly ends. The satchel's whispers grow louder, threading through his pulse like venom. Somewhere beyond the horizon, thunder rumbles, not a warning, a challenge. The salt-stained shores of Seriphos no longer feel like home. Perseus's sandals touch the sand, and the island seems smaller somehow. The olive trees stunted, the air thick with the scent of fear. A fisherman's whisper guides him to the cliffside temple, its white columns scarred by torch smoke. Inside, Danae kneels before the altar, her once proud shoulders hunched like a bird with clipped wings. When she turns, her face is a mosaic of exhaustion and defiance. "They said you wouldn't return," she murmurs, her fingers brushing the hilt of a sacrificial knife hidden in her robes. "But I knew the sea would spit you back to me." Her words are steady, but the tremor in her hands tells another story, one of sleepless nights and footsteps, echoing too close outside the temple gates. The rage that fills Perseus isn't the hot, reckless kind. It's colder, sharper, a blade honed by every mile flown and every truth uncovered. Polydex didn't send him to die for honor. He sent him away to starve a mother into submission. The satchel at Perseus's hip seems to grow heavier, Medusa's presence a silent pulse against his thigh. Torchlight flickers against the palace walls as he strides through the courtyard, past guards too slow to raise their spears. The feasting hall reeks of wine and roasted meat, the king lounging on his throne like a lion gnawing on a bone. Polydec's laughter booms when he spots Perseus, a sound meant to mock, but it cracks at the edges. No Gorgon's head, no glory. The king's smirk is a hooked thing, designed to draw blood. Just as I thought, a boy who couldn't even die on command. The hall holds its breath. Perseus doesn't shout, doesn't flinch. His voice is the calm before the tide pulls back to reveal the wreckage beneath. You wish to see her. The satchel loosens with a hiss, the stench of venom and ancient power flooding the room. What happens next isn't chaos, it's inevitability. The king's grin petrifies first, his sneer frozen mid-twist. Stone crawls up his arms as he tries to rise, his goblet shattering against the thrashing bodies of his courtiers. Their screams are cut short, one by one, as the curse finds them noble and servant alike, all equal in their final, silent horror. Only the bard by the hearth escapes, his lyre clattering to the floor as he stumbles backward. Perseus lets him run. Let the island hear what happens when gods and mortals gamble with lives not their own. Danae finds him there, standing amid the statues, her breath warm against his shoulder. She doesn't praise him, doesn't scold. Her fingers simply curl around his, sticky with blood he didn't spill. "Come away," she says, and for the first time since this began, Perseus realizes he's trembling. The weight of the empty satchel drags at him, but it's nothing compared to the quiet truth settling in his bones. Some choices, once made, can never be unmade. Outside, the wind carries the scent of the sea. Clean, for now, but the horizon darkens. Storms always find their way home. The silence in the feasting hall is thick enough to taste not the quiet of reverence, but the stunned hush that follows a lightning strike. One by one, the islanders creep forward, their sandals whispering against the stone floor as they kneel before Perseus. Their terror is a living thing, clinging to the air like the scent of charred meat. Polydec's statue stands frozen mid-snarl, the marble already cracking along its seams. Then, with a sound like dry bones collapsing, it crumbles into dust. The crowd gasps, but their awe feels distant, muffled, as if Perseus is watching through someone else's eyes. A glimmer of light fractures the dimness. Athena steps from the shadows, her armor burnished to a mirror sheen, reflecting not the room, but the storm clouds churning outside. Her smile is a blade's edge. You've done well, son of Zeus. The praise lands like a stone in still water, sending ripples through the tension. Perseus's fingers twitch toward the empty satchel at his hip. The weight of Medusa's head is gone, but the stain of her blood lingers, seeping into his skin like ink. Something hot and jagged rises in his throat. Was it ever justice? The words spill out before he can stop them. Or just vengeance wearing a crown? Athena's gaze sharpens, her gray eyes darkening like a gathering squall. For a heartbeat, the air between them thrums not with divine wrath, but something far colder, the silence of a door slamming shut. She doesn't answer. Instead, she lifts the Gorgon's head high, its serpentine locks still twitching faintly. The moment it touches her aegis, the snakes stiffen into gilded relief, their mouths forever parted in silent hisses. A trophy, a warning. The islanders press their foreheads to the ground, but Perseus can't look away from the Gorgon's hollow eyes. They hold no accusation, only a weary resignation that cuts deeper than any curse. The goddess vanishes in a swirl of owl feathers, leaving behind the scent of lightning and something bitter. Perseus exhales, his breath stirring the dust of a dead king at his feet. The truth settles over him, heavy as the helm he no longer wears. Monsters aren't born. They're made by betrayal, by greed, by gods who twist suffering into scripture. The islanders rise, their voices weaving a hymn of praise, but the words turn to ash in his ears. Victory tastes like salt and rust, and somewhere beyond the waves, carried on a wind too faint for mortal ears, the last echoes of Medusa's laughter linger, not in triumph, but in grim understanding. The fates may weave the threads, but the gods hold the shears, and every cut leaves someone bleeding. The throne room feels too large, too hollow, as Perseus places the crown into Dicte's calloused hands. The fisherman's fingers, once rough from hauling nets, now trembling under the weight of a kingdom, close around the gold like it might dissolve. I only ever wanted to keep you alive, Dicte murmurs, his voice frayed with disbelief. The irony isn't lost on Perseus. The man who pulled him from the sea as a babe now drowns in the tides of power he never sought. Nightfall brings no peace. On the ship carrying him and Andromeda away from Cepheus, the sea isn't water but a black mirror, reflecting faces he can't unsee. Polydecks sneer hardening to stone. The Graeae's hollow sockets weeping dust. Worst of all, Medusa, not as the monster he slew, but as she might have been, a woman kneeling in Athena's temple, her braids catching the sunlight before the shadows took her. The dreams twist deeper each time, until he wakes gasping, the sheets tangled like serpents around his legs. Andromeda's hand finds his in the dark, her grip fierce enough to bruise. She doesn't offer empty comfort, no lies about duty or glory. Instead, she presses her forehead to his shoulder and whispers, "Tell me again about the nymph's cave." It's not the story she wants, it's the confession beneath, the weight of choices that can't be unmade. Perseus speaks of the lament they sang, of how even divine gifts come threaded with thorns. The ship's timbers creak in sympathy, or maybe warning. By dawn, the horizon bleeds into a new shore, but the whispers follow, not just from the waves, but from the satchel stashed beneath their berth, its fabric still stained with venom that never quite dries. Athena's aegis may bear Medusa's likeness now, but the true curse was never the Gorgon's gaze. It's the question that gnaws at his ribs with every mile they put between themselves and the past, when the gods craft a hero who cleans the blood from their hands. Andromeda traces the outline of an old wound on his palm, her touch lighter than the dawn mist. "We don't get to choose the stories they tell about us," she says. The wind catches her words, carrying them toward the prow, where the figurehead stares blindly ahead. Somewhere beyond the bow, the waves break white against rocks. No map is named. Not an ending, a pivot point. Perseus closes his eyes and lets the salt spray sting his cheeks, wondering if redemption is a place they'll recognize, or something they'll have to build from the wreckage. Years blur like sand through an hourglass. Perseus stands on the marble steps of his palace, the weight of a crown no longer foreign, yet the sea wind still carries the same salt, and something darker now. A messenger kneels before him, trembling not from reverence but terror. The temple, the man gasps. Athena's shield, it bleeds. The words slither through the courtyard, turning the afternoon light thin and brittle. The journey to the sanctuary feels like walking backward through time. Olive trees wither at the roadside, their roots blackened as if scorched from within. When Perseus pushes open the temple doors, the stench hits him first, not the familiar incense of devotion, but the metallic tang of a slaughterhouse. There, above the altar, Athena's aegis hangs crooked, its golden surface split like overripe fruit. From the fissures, thick droplets of blood gather, slow and relentless, painting the goddess's feet in crimson. The Gorgon's face, once a static warning, now contorts in silent agony, her stone lips parted in a scream only Perseus seems to hear. A shadow stirs near the offering bowl, an aged priestess, her blind eyes milky with visions. "You thought it ended with a blade," she croaks, her fingers tracing the cracks in the floor where the blood pools. But curses are echoes, boy. They bounce off walls, seep into soil, wait for someone to slip. Her laugh is dry as the Graeae whispers. The gods love their morals, but they need their monsters. Perseus reaches out, hesitating before his fingertips graze the aegis. The moment he makes contact, the blood stops mid-fall. A single droplet clings to his skin, warm as living flesh. In that suspended second, the temple walls dissolve. He sees her again, not the Gorgon, but the woman, Medusa's laughter in sunlight, the way her braids unraveled when she spun to greet Athena in a temple, much like this one. The vision shatters as the droplet hits the stone with a sound like a judge's gavel. Outside, thunder groans though the sky is clear. The priestess tilts her head, listening to something beyond mortal hearing. "They'll rewrite this, you know," she says. "Turn your grief into a hymn, her suffering into a lesson." She spits into the bloody dust, but stone remembers. And so do you. Perseus stays long after the priestess shuffles away, kneeling not in prayer, but in terrible kinship. The blood resumes its slow descent, each drop a reminder. Some debts aren't paid with victory. They are carried like the weight of a head in a satchel, like the echo of a voice that still asks, was it worth it? The wind through the temple columns offers no answer, only the relentless whisper of waves against a shore that never forgets. The cave mouth yawns before Perseus like an old wound, its edges crumbled by time and echoing with the ghosts of his choices. He kneels in the dust where Medusa fell, the bronze mirror cold against his palms. No grand speeches, no prayers, just the rasp of his breath and the quiet clink of offerings laid bare. Andromeda's coiled braid, dark as spilled ink, a wineskin of Thessalian honey, the last scales from his own battle-worn sandals. Tributes for no one, tributes for her. The wind stirs, strangely warm against his neck. Rubble shifts, not from collapse, but from the slow uncoiling of stone serpents, half buried in the debris. Their eyes, once molten with rage, now glaze over like cooling embers. One brushes his wrist, not to strike, but to taste his pulse before crumbling to ash. The hisses fade into something almost like a lullaby. Perseus lifts the mirror. For a heartbeat, the reflection wavers not his own face, but a woman's. No snakes, no scars, just dark curls framing a smile that holds no bitterness, only quiet recognition. The vision lasts no longer than a moth's wing against flame. When he turns the bronze to catch the light again, the surface shows only his own hollow stare. Silence settles like mist, not the heavy quiet of a curse, but the hushed pause between waves. As he stands to leave, his shadow stretches long across the cave floor, merging with the petrified remains of warriors long forgotten. A whisper threads through the air, not words, but the memory of them, tangled with salt and the faintest trace of jasmine. The journey back to the shore feels lighter, though his hands remain empty. Somewhere behind him, the cave exhales, its breath carrying the last echoes of a story neither myth nor man could contain. The sea greets him with its endless churning, indifferent to epilogues. Yet as the tide laps at his feet, Perseus swears he hears it, not a lament, not a curse, but the softest sigh of release. The kind that comes not from endings, but from truths finally laid bare. The firelight flickers low in the hearth, casting long shadows on the faces of Perseus's grandchildren. Their knees press into the worn rug, eyes reflecting flames and fascination. The old demigod's voice is softer now, the edges of his legend smoothed by time. She wasn't always the monster they carved on temple walls. He murmurs, calloused fingers tracing the curve of a clay cup. Once, her laughter could silence a room full of poets. A hush falls. The children lean closer, their breath catching, not at tales of snake-haired terrors, but at the woman who wove flowers into her hair before prayers. Perseus paints a different picture tonight, a priestess kneeling at Athena's altar, her devotion so fierce it burned like a lamp in the dark. The youngest, a girl with Andromeda's stubborn chin, interrupts. Then why did the goddess let it happen? The question hangs, sharp as the scent of burning olive wood. Outside, a gust rattles the shutters like an impatient spirit. Perseus doesn't flinch, because gods mistake fear for respect. He says at last, watching the sparks rise toward the smoke-blackened ceiling, and some lessons must be written in blood before anyone thinks to question them. Their grandmother's loom clacks softly in the corner, the rhythm punctuating the silence. She doesn't look up, but her hands tighten around the threads, deep blue, like the sea where Medusa's blood first touched the waves. The children notice. They always do. Stories here aren't just told. They're woven, each retelling altering the pattern ever so slightly. Athena's name, once spoken with reverence, now lands like a stone in still water. A boy tugs Perseus's sleeve, his voice barely audible over the fire's crackle. "Do you think she forgives us?" The old hero blinks, surprised by the plural. Us, as if the weight belongs to them all now. Before he can answer, thunder growls in the distance, not from the sky, but from the direction of Athena's hilltop temple. The children exchange glances. They've heard the rumors, how the Aegis weeps crimson down the marble steps, how priestesses scrub the stains at dawn, only to find them returned by dusk. Perseus reaches for the wine, but his hand trembles. The cup isn't empty, yet he sets it down untouched. Forgiveness isn't the point, he admits, softer now. It's about remembering, even when the gods would rather we didn't. The hearth's glow catches the silver in his beard, the lines around his eyes deepening as he smiles not in triumph, but in quiet defiance. Outside, the first raindrops kiss the earth, carrying the salt sting of distant shores. Some stories, once unraveled, refuse to be spun back into myth. The chamber smells of crushed lavender and candle wax, the kind of hush that settles when the world holds its breath. Perseus's chest rises unevenly under the thin blanket, each breath a labor. The grandchildren have been sent away, the healers dismissed. Only Andromeda remains, her fingers laced with his still steady, though the knuckles are knotted with years. Outside, a nightingale sings, its melody threading through the rustle of cypress leaves. Then, a shift in the air, not a chill, but a presence, like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Perseus turns his head, and there she stands, no serpents, no stone-cracked skin, just a woman in a simple white chiton, her hair braided with wild hyacinths. Medusa's smile is soft, unburdened by the centuries of terror, her name evoked. Andromeda stiffens, her grip tightening, but Perseus exhales a laugh that rattles like autumn leaves. "I thought you'd come." His voice is frayed, yet lighter than it's been in decades. Medusa steps closer. The hem of her robe doesn't stir the floor's dust, as if she exists just outside time. "You broke the cycle," she murmurs, and the words ripple through the room like a breeze through wheat. Her hand hovers above his, not to curse, but to offer. The moment their fingers meet, the walls dissolve. The chamber floods with gold, not the harsh glare of the sun, but the warm glow of a hearth after a long journey. Somewhere far off, a sound echoes not thunder, but the crack of marble splitting, the groan of statues shedding their stone skins. The weight pressing on Perseus's ribs unravels, not in a rush, but like a knot slowly loosened by patient hands. Andromeda gasps. Her tears aren't of grief, but wonder, because the man beside her sits up straighter, his face peaceful in a way she hasn't seen since youth. His lips move, forming words too faint to catch, but Medusa hears. Her nod is slight, almost tender, as she leans down to whisper something that makes Perseus's eyes widen with recognition. Then light, not blinding, but boundless, spilling through the open window, across the bed, over the fresco of heroes on the far wall. The colors brighten, the figures stirring as if waking from a dream. And in that final heartbeat, as Perseus's breath stills, the nightingale's song soars into silence. Not an end, a release. The last sound isn't a lament, but the distant, crystalline shattering of stone, somewhere beyond the grove, beyond the shore, where the waves carry fragments of old curses out to sea. The morning sun spills golden over the broken cliffs, where the Gorgon's cave once stood, its mouth now softened by time and creeping vines. Andromeda kneels in the dew-damp grass, her hands steady as she places the final stone at the base of Perseus's statue. It's not the grand marble likeness of a hero the bards might sing of. This one is smaller, humbler, his face turned not in triumph, but toward the weathered shrine beside him. Medusa's image, carved not with serpent coils, but with braids loose around her shoulders, gazes back at him across the space between, two figures frozen not in conflict, but in quiet acknowledgement. A gust stirs the petals strewn across the ground, asphodel and poppy, offerings for the restless and the redeemed alike. The wind carries them over the rubble, where stone faces still peer blindly from the earth, their features blurred by centuries of rain. Yet between those cracks, something new pushes upward, slender green shoots, their blossoms pale as moonlit foam. The earth remembers, but it does not resent. Far above, where the clouds skim the peaks of Olympus, Athena stands motionless. The aegis at her chest is still. No blood drips, no serpents hiss. For the first time since a mortal's blade struck true, the shield is silent. The goddess does not smile. She does not rage. She simply watches as the wind traces its fingers through the grass below, weaving together the threads of two names, too long spoken, only in warning. The weight in her hands feels unfamiliar now, light, back among the ruins. Andromeda brushes her fingers over the base of the shrine, where someone has scratched a single word into the stone. Remember. Not as a curse, not as a lesson, but as a plea to see the full tapestry, not just the frayed edges. The shadows lengthen, but the air holds no whispers, no lingering bitterness. Only the scent of salt and blooming thyme, carried seaward on a tide, finally at peace. Some stories end with thunder. This one ends with roots cracking through stone, with petals catching in the hair of passers-by who pause, just for a moment, to wonder at the figures standing side by side. Not conqueror and conquered, just two souls, their burdens laid down at last, while the world grows softer around them.